have one queued up here to watch together and discuss. We left evangelicalism due to Trumpism and white Christian nationalism. This ought to be pretty interesting. It's got 79,000 views, 3 weeks old. Amy Hawk. Let's jump in.
We were not raised in the church. So we came into the church in our early 20s. We had just gotten married and we were invited by some friends and we loved the message. Steve and I, we both fell head over heels in love with Jesus. I was a very broken and insecure person at that time. And so there was no greater message for me to hear than that I had a loving Father who wanted to honor me and protect me and be there for me at all times. And so I dove right in. Every Bible study I could get my hands on. Within, I believe, 2 years of entering the church, I went on staff. So I was communications director. I started a women's ministry.
Which isn't surprising. As we know, many people have healed and turned their lives completely around by finding Jesus Christ. So her story of being broken is not probably, but definitely millions of people's stories of being broken. So she sounds like one of many.
Started teaching at women's breakfasts and women's events, and we both became very, very involved. Steve became a worship leader over the years, and so, we were in it. So then 2016 happens, and we start realizing that the message that we heard in the beginning had changed somewhat. All of a sudden, the emphasis seemed to be about taking control of the culture. It turned into like this culture war. And so it wasn't so much about spreading the gospel of kindness and Jesus' favor and goodwill toward other men. It became more about like an us versus them type of mentality. So we were growing really uncomfortable with that. In the early days when we first were in the church, starting in like 2000, there were a lot of messages about community kindness, about taking care of your neighbor, about taking care of people groups that needed special care, the impoverished, the immigrant, the homeless, the elderly. And then all of a sudden, that message, it became okay to start criticizing and even using derogatory language and dehumanizing language about some of these groups. And so we were just growing more and more uncomfortable. I'm the oldest of many siblings.
Let me pause it there and talk a little bit about what she's experiencing here and share my 2 cents. From my perspective, what I think happened right around that time frame, once Trump took office and really later towards the end of his term and then coming into Biden's term, but probably was brewing around 2016, was, from my perspective, the Christian right. I think they were feeling very attacked, and I think they were looking at the country and seeing let's just call it what it is, downright depravity. And I wasn't a Christian then. And I was just a dude wanting to be left alone. 2016, doing my thing, trying to stay as far away from the GOV as I can. I'd moved away from them and kind of wrote them off 15, 20 years ago, and the media, and a lot of just, mainstream movies and music, etc. Not so much movies and music at that time, but definitely media, definitely politics. I just thought they were just clown shows. And at that time, I thought they were incompetent. Of course, now I think they're downright, diabolical after what happened during COVID times, but I digress. But I think what happened is the Christian right had been pushed so far for so long that they started to speak up, and they started to, I guess, stand up for themselves, and possibly that looks like them being mean. But when you really break it down, and this is why I stand with the Christian right nowadays, and I don't concur with everything they think. And I think they sometimes go too far as well. You know what? I'm going to take that back. I don't stand with either side. I identify more with the Christian right just because the left has completely lost their marbles. But then again, I agree with some people on the left. Like I never thought I'd agree with the Young Turks, and I agree with them specifically about what's happening in Palestine, and they're even waking up to some of the things that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris did. But then I see the Christian right, and some of them are pro-Israel when they're basically committing a genocide against Palestinian people. So the world is wildly whacked up right now. But I think that Christians have been pushed so far for so long that kind of, you give the left an inch, they take a mile kind of a thing. And I can see why they would get upset and irritated and start to stand up for themselves. Let's continue.
And I am the only one of us who has ever gone to church regularly, and I felt that it was my responsibility to get my siblings to go to church and to exert my any influence I could over them to go to church, to try to get into a Bible study or a community group. And so over the years, I would plant those seeds and I would invite them when they were in my town. And what ended up happening is, again, around 2016, 2017, I heard people who claimed to be following Christ start using derogatory language and actually bullying language about Democrats and liberals. And my sisters are Democrats. They're not evil people. They are people who think differently on some policies. But the language that was being used started making me realize I don't think I can invite my sisters to church anymore. Because some of these people are not safe people for them. And it made me think twice about, well, if this is if I'm in an institution where I wouldn't feel comfortable inviting my sisters to come, then why am I here? And
you know what? I see what she's talking about. And quite frankly, I'm sure that I have been guilty of that over the last handful of years when you take a stand, specifically talking about the VACCINES, but it does spill over. And this is why this polarization in our country is so diabolical. I consider myself a nice person. I don't care what people do with their lives. I support people to do whatever they want to do. However, having said that, I'm done being pushed to do something I don't want to do, specifically in the medical arena. And also specifically when I see cities, New York, LA, Portland, and Seattle burning themselves down. And then I see leaders in my own city following the same ideology and thinking process that caused those cities to burn down. I get a little upset because I'm like, why would you destroy your own country? Why would you destroy your own city? Why are you doing things that have proven themselves not to work? Like when I see backwards thinking and erroneous thinking, I'm going to say something. Like I'm going to speak up, and I've seen a lot of it over the last handful of years. And as a person living in America who has, a stake in how things play out in this country, and also a human being living on planet or living on the earth, I have a stake in how things play out here. Probably a little bit of getting older and more, confident in my own self. I'm going to say something. Like I'm not just going to sit by and let what I view to be silliness go on. And I think that's what's happening with many people. Excuse me. And I think it can be interpreted as me being an asshole or them being assholes. And it's just one of those things, when I look at the bigger picture, I see the forces that, move mountains on this planet. I'm talking about the forces that can move an army across the world to go destroy another country, or, you name it, bail out Wall Street or do whatever, the money changers of this world, call them what you will. When I see things like that, and I realize the detrimental effects that can have on humanity and my brothers and sisters around the world, I'm going to say something, and it can be construed as, oh, you're being antagonistic, or you're being negative, or you're being, rude. I don't see it as that. I see this as an all hands on deck type of situation where people need to speak truth. From my perspective, we have been manipulated, deceived, lied to for decades, centuries, possibly millennia. That's what I see. When you look at the idea of all these wars are caused by bankers to enrich themselves at the expense of us. And now the pandemics, which I view as complete and total bullshit because it's all tied in and all the same thing, saying something does make you kind of look like a jerk sometimes, but what else are you going to do? Let's continue.
And the other thing that happened is that I had heard a message preached that it sticks with me to this day. A pastor that I greatly admired preached a message about the holiness of women's bodies and how Jesus is the ultimate protector and defender of women, that he does not take it lightly anytime that a woman would come to harm, and that women's bodies are vessels for the Holy Spirit, and that they are radiant and holy. And I remember this message all these many years later. That's how greatly it impacted me. So then to hear that same pastor discount Donald Trump's comments on the Access Hollywood tapes, where he confessed to sexual assault, and to downplay that, and then to also in the same message say that we shouldn't criticize a leader in a position of authority, made me realize that I could no longer trust the pastors and leaders that I used to trust. And it made me rethink everything about my faith. It really shook me up. It shook both of my husband and I up. And that's when we decided we need to step out of the institution of evangelicalism for a while and follow Jesus on our own, apart from the church environment. And that is when I started writing my book, The Judas Effect: How Evangelicals Betrayed Jesus for Power, because I became aware of so many other people like Steve and I who were struggling to stay in this institution that we felt had betrayed us and had betrayed the actual message of the Christ that they were claiming to follow. So that's what the book is about. You can read more about our story here. I hear from people every single day who say that their faith was shaken, but that they are realizing that Jesus is outside of that institution and that they can follow him from wherever they are. The Lord will find you, and the Lord will restore our faith in him. Our faith, it does not rest in an institution, and it doesn't rest in these shepherds and leaders who have betrayed their sheep by defending a bully instead of those he has bullied.
All right. Let me just make a couple of comments, and we're going to jump into these comments below. I see what she's saying. I see it as clear as day. And it's one of the reasons I kind of got sketched out about church. when I came to Jesus Christ because of the evilness that I saw in the world due to the thing that happened in the 2020, and I have now since come into a new understanding, and I have a ton of questions, and I kind of am a person without a home, but when I saw pure evil in the world manifest itself, I was like, holy shit. So it was maybe 2022 when I came to Jesus Christ, and I started going to church with a friend, and wonderful people. Absolutely wonderful people, just a wonderful experience. But what I did notice, not only at that church, but also like she's talking about different pastors, online personalities, etc. They were basically putting Trump up on a pedestal, and he could do no wrong, and he was their guy, and they were going to stand by him no matter what. And I started to see flaws in Trump that I didn't see prior. In 2016 to 2020, I didn't really see anything. I didn't really dig deep enough, to be quite honest, but I thought I loved what he was doing with the WEF, telling them to go pound sand. I loved when he forgave the loans from the historical black colleges. He appeared to be doing good things in the economy. I didn't know at the time that he was still facilitating the bombing of Yemen, helping Saudi bomb Yemen by refueling the planes. I didn't know at the time that he was, I wasn't keen on him. The worst thing he's done, the most stupid thing he's done, the one thing that I finally made me break ties with him was giving pharmaceutical companies billions of dollars for a product and no liability. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. Like, everyone, when they buy something, no one buys something in today's day and age where you can't return it. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. I don't care how fearful or how much they say you need it. It's stupid not to be able to hold a company accountable if their product doesn't work the way they say it works. So I see what she's saying. They did lose their mind, and I think they kind of did that because they see him as going to be championing their cause, the Christian rights cause, because I think they feel so triggered by the left, and the left is super triggering to people. I mean, these pride parades where you have 60-year-old men twerking and dancing in tidy whities. Dude, I'm not even a Christian conservative person like that. And that's disgusting for me to watch, let alone have little kids. It's just weird. Changing the definitions of words, allowing men to compete with women in sports, not being able to describe a woman, talking about cis women, being pro gender reassignment surgery. Like, the left has completely lost their minds. They've gone completely off the deep end. And believe me, I've tried to understand them, but I just can't. So I'm kind of a person without a home as well. But let's see what some of these people are saying. This guy says, or this gal says, I no longer say I'm a Christian, but a follower of Jesus Christ. We're not the tribe of the elephant or donkey, but the tribe of the lamb. I like that. I don't consider myself the elephant or the donkey anymore either. Any church that demonizes others is not a place of God's home. True. Defending the bully instead of those he has bullied says a lot about too many pastors in this country. And I see it from the other side too. I see pastors defending Israel and saying not one bad thing about Israel. Heck, I see Ben Shapiro defending Israel and saying not one bad thing about Israel. When someone doesn't have anything bad to say about someone else, you know their sketch. I know their sketch. Like, everyone has skeletons in their closet. No one's a perfect being. And another pastor another preacher that does that is Jonathan Cahn. That guy can't say anything bad about Israel. It's super weird. Thank you, Amy. America needs more Christians like you who understand that bullying is the last thing that Jesus would ever teach. I like that, but the way I also feel it, and maybe this is because I'm a new Christian or I have questions, and also I'm just thinking for myself too. At what point in a fallen world do you not turn the other cheek? At what point in a fallen world do you preserve God's creation or conserve God's creation and stand up for yourself and do what it takes to preserve the creation. If it takes speaking your mind and it may hurt someone else's feelings, I feel that's appropriate. You know, many Christians are waking up to the fact that, hey, yeah, Jesus wasn't kind, supposedly. Again, all this I take with a grain of salt, that Jesus was truthful, and that he did maybe some tough love and saying, hey, if you're not following these paths. But again, make no mistake about it, I have serious questions about Christianity. As a non-Christian who is fed up with the Christian nationalist hate mongering, can I just say thanks for being a reasonable person who is paying attention to your surroundings? Let's see what else this person says. You give me hope that others can wake up from this actual hell. Okay, Jesus said, and many false prophets shall rise and shall deceive many. That's what I feel. That's what I see. 71-year-old from the UK here who is born again follower of Christ and shocked and ashamed of what is happening in America in his name. Amen to what you were saying. See, I think it's the polarization that is happening, and that's why many people feel could be approaching a civil war type situation. It's wild. I'm an atheist. I have often felt that many so-called Christians are not followers of Jesus. Let's see. They love more than them. I welcome the stranger. I left the church completely when they aligned themselves with Trump. I only started again after finding Reverend Ed Trevor's Church Without Walls. Through this all, I have been a follower of Jesus like you. You know, I think Trump could be leading people astray. You know, he's a charismatic person. Like I said, I fell under the spell. I'm not under the spell anymore because I have too many questions. Again, primarily, first and foremost, why would you make deal with pharmaceutical companies who have a long history of making fraudulent, misleading claims about their products? What's up, bro? A true Christian cannot support Trump and his ideology. His way of thinking is all the opposite of what God wants us to become. So happy to hear you, Amy. Common sense with truth, Jesus is forever. Let's see. Yeah, a lot of people sound like they're agreeing with her, and I agree with her. You know, but again, if you're going to have to choose a side, I mean, hopefully it doesn't come down to that. Because again, I have serious questions about both sides. Let me know what you think of her video in the comments down below, and I will talk to you in the next one. Until next time, I wish you all the best health, wealth, and success. Bye-bye.